regarding Dick Tremaine, she says, Lucy says, most of his behavior was asinine, but at least he was different. My dear friends, this is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue on with our discussion of this great series known as Twin Peaks. And we have been going through each of the episodes one at a time in this video discussion series. And so today I'd like to focus our attention, if I may, on that episode, which is often referred to as episode 11. And as with these discussions, I'd like to focus our attention on the events leading up to and including this episode 11, directed by Todd Holland. And so I also don't hold myself out to be in any way, shape, or form a Twin Peaks expert. So I try to get my details as correct as possible, but I will make mistakes. So I apologize in advance for that. But I must say that I am a big fan of Twin Peaks. I have seen this series so many times. And now on the occasion of this video discussion, I'd like to focus, say that I'm watching it again for the nth time, and it's so much fun. So thank you very much for providing me with this opportunity to share with you some of what I feel about this, and also to hear from you and to hear how you feel about this wonderful series called Twin Peaks. But without further ado, let us talk about this great episode, another great episode, episode 11. And my goodness, so many things happening, so many characters, so many twists and turns, as it were. And so where do we begin? We begin with this very intriguing, odd, weird shot of some kind of turning thing. Whatever the case is, what is this? We're not sure. And we realize that this is something from the inside of this wall panel. It looks like some weird hole or black hole, but it ends up being this thing. You zoom out, and you recall that, yes, Leland Palmer has been arrested for the murder of Jacques Renault. And here he is in the interrogation room at the Sheriff's Department in Twin Peaks, and he's being interrogated by Sheriff Truman and also Dale Cooper. And also we see in the background Doc Hayward as well. So I think in the last video discussion I made my comments, as it were, in terms of the celebration, if you will, of the greatness that is Doc Hayward. And here he is showing yet more of his capabilities. He's part of the investigation. He is a type of quasi authority figure, or he's a member of the authorities here. So he's well trusted, and I think rightly so, with this information and this interrogation. And this interrogation is leading to the essentially the confession from Leland that, yes, indeed, he killed Jacques Renault because, according to what he says here, he thought that it was Jacques Renault who killed Laura Palmer, his daughter. And so this is quite a revelation. Indeed, this is something that we saw from episode 7, from that climactic series finale. Or I'm sorry, not series finale, season finale, excuse me, from episode 7, with all these events happening, including, yes, Jacques Renault, who's in the hospital, Calhoun Memorial, and there he is taped up and then smothered quite violently with a pillow by that which we see being Leland Palmer. And so here is the culmination of that in this scene. And later on we have, or immediately after, we have Doc Hayward lamenting the fact that no parent should have to bury one's child. But then Cooper, I think, stops him in his tracks and says, you know, this is murder we're talking about. That's his implication. This is the murder of Jacques Renault. So therein lies a type of dilemma here, and we'll see how this is developed, which is the concept of justice and the concept of meting out justice, and how this is examined, I think, in the context of the justice system, at least as it's portrayed here in Twin Peaks, the series Twin Peaks. because we have, of course, the murder of Laura Palmer, the killing of Laura Palmer, and who killed Laura Palmer. And this is the question of the entire series and the entire existence of Twin Peaks: who killed Laura Palmer? So this is almost a type of it's a direct question. It's a very grave question. It's a very serious question. It's also a very existential question in a lot of ways. But also in relation to that, I mean, the dilemma that Cooper is talking about here is this idea: two wrongs do not make a right. And that is certainly the case, at least how he seems to be wording it in the context of the justice system and crime. And so we'll have to see how this plays itself out, this crime which Leland Palmer is now admitting to and confessing. Indeed, we saw him commit with regard to Jacques Renault. So we'll have to see how this plays itself out. But here we have a new kind of wrinkle, a new name that is being thrown about. Who is M.T. Wentz? We're not quite sure, but we understand M.T. Wentz is a food critic. Not known what M.T. Wentz looks like, although there is a legend or rumor that M.T. Wentz uses cash only. And so this excites the people at the Great Northern because of the food and service industry potential, and also excites Norma and Hank at the Double R. Because hopefully this might give a good press to the Double R should M.T. Wentz visit and give a great review. So this excites Hank. And so we see Hank, I think, very earnestly trying to get, he pulls some money out of the register and says, I'm going to go buy some tablecloths and candles and try to liven up the place in order to try to impress any food critics that might come their way. And so I see this to be a very, I think, genuine show of affection on the part of Hank. Hank is a very dubious character. He seems to be quite a character that's kind of sinister. There's a lot of sinister things about him. But I'm not sure what the motivations or hidden agendas are, if any, in terms of this kind of liveliness with regard to Norma and the diner. But he does seem to be genuinely interested in trying to get the diner decorated in such a way. Is this a hidden agenda to try to get back into the good graces of Norma? I don't know, maybe not. But in any event, there's this type of almost boyish charm that Hank displays, even if it's for a moment, because then we also see some of the sinister sides of this, especially as we see the ending of this episode, Twin Peaks, and Jonathan, the cousin, so-called of Josie, at least how Josie describes him. In any event, we'll talk about Josie as well, because we see the return of Josie Packard, in a very, I should say, very somewhat in a manner that would set off some alarm bells. Well, actually, let's talk about Josie and Jonathan and this particular aspect now. So we know that Pete has been keeping tabs on Josie, what's been going on, and been telling Sheriff Truman. We saw in a previous episode that Sheriff Truman was talking to Pete on the phone about this. And now we see the return of Josie. And we see Pete reacting to this. We see Josie coming through the door with these huge boxes of what we understand to be shopping, dresses and the like, Seattle. That's her story, right? And so she comes back, and it's already quite an interesting situation, because she was very much into the goings-on of the mill. We saw this from the pilot that we talked about, and the situation involving the mill and Andrew Packard and her rights to the mill. But maybe there's a limitation in how she can sell off the mill, because she needs to get apparently the approval of the Packard heirs. And so we understand that this was Catherine and Pete, I think. But now that Catherine is considered to be dead, or she's assumed to be dead, there's something to do with getting Pete's signature in terms of the mill. And so this is referred to a little bit later when Josie is talking with Jonathan. But Josie now comes back. This is earlier in the episode. Comes back and sees Pete. They embrace. Pete's very happy to see her. But then she says something quite curious about how she was going to leave all the situation with the mill, because it burned down. She's going to leave all that to Catherine, which I found to be very curious when I first saw this episode, because it seems like the mill being such an important thing to everyone concerned, including Josie, it seems kind of odd actually that she would just leave everything to Catherine. And this then leads Pete to talk about what happened to Catherine, or it's assumed to be the worst. So this is again reminding us about what happened with the mill fire and Catherine at the climax of, or one of the climaxes of episode 7, or the season 1 finale, as it were. Now, we should also mention Sheriff Truman and Sheriff Truman's reaction. Now, Sheriff Truman seems to be quite torn about his love for Josie, but also the possibility that maybe something is afoot. And so we see a little bit later when he tries genuinely to see if she really went to Seattle, or maybe there was something else going on. Again, it's quite suspicious, but we see something very interesting here. Something similar is happening in terms of her. This is the moment where she there is a it's quite it's a scene that involves sexual relations between, or the suggestion of sexual relations between Josie and Sheriff Truman. So it seems like at the point where Sheriff Truman wants to get at the truth, this is where Josie really comes on to him in a very in terms of sexual advances, and so that leads to their sexual encounter and embrace and kissing on the couch. And then we get a close-up of the window and the rain, and we see the figure of who we understand later to be Jonathan. We've seen throughout the series sitting in the restaurant, reading the newspaper, looking over Cooper, talking on the telephone, asking for Josie. And then later we see Josie and this person, Jonathan, together. There's a mentioning of the name Eckhart. So this might be a name that might be very significant later on. So let's keep let's remember this, Eckhart. Incidentally, too, I know it's not anything to do with Twin Peaks, but there's the film which is called Batman, and directed by Tim Burton, and it stars Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, and also Jack Palance. And early on in the film Batman, I love the line that Jack Palance says. He's on the phone and he says, "Get me Lieutenant Eckhart." Sorry, that's my very bad Jack Palance impersonation. I should do one arm. I can't even do one-hand push-ups. But anyway, I used to be able to do one-hand push-ups. So many years ago when I was fitter. Now I'm not so fit. And I'm not so strong as I once was. So I can't do one-handed push-ups. But anyway, sorry about that. So what was I saying? So Eckhart. So let's remember this name, Eckhart. And we can go from there. Now, I should say, too, just in passing, too, I mentioned Sternwood, and we should also mention Sid. There's a very memorable appearance of the law clerk, Sid. Royal Dano, and also Hank Warden, who plays the waiter, and we saw, for instance, in episode 8. These are some and we see other people who appear in Twin Peaks, actors who have this incredible connection with Hollywood cinema, with say westerns and genres and of that sort, and appearing in many films like that in the past. And so there is, as I mentioned in a past video discussion, among many things in Twin Peaks, there is this idea of connections with cinema and golden age of cinema and Hollywood cinema and westerns and the like. So we have this, I think, in many ways, also in the people who appear in Twin Peaks, such as Royal Dano, who plays Sternwood. So this is really great. Incidentally, too, I love the connection, too, between his appearance and Jack Nance's appearance in Twin Peaks and the films Ghoulies and Ghoulies 2. Do you know anyone out there who's a fan of Ghoulies and Ghoulies 2? I certainly am. I go back and forth, which I prefer. I know there are other Ghoulies films, but which I prefer, Ghoulies or Ghoulies. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day, perhaps. The debate over Ghoulies versus Ghoulies 2. Again, I know there are other Ghoulies films, but that's a discussion for another day. Now, back to this. So, speaking of introduction of new characters, we seemed also to have the character of this somewhat mysterious-looking figure who is based on his name, Mr. Tojamura, who suddenly appears in the Great Northern here. Uh, Tojamura, or sometimes people call him Tajimura. But the name is Tojamura. That's how it's spelled. So Tojamura or Tajimura, but Tojamura. So Mr. Tojamura, it seems, and suddenly appears and paying cash only. So this again might suggest that maybe this person is MT Wentz or not. Who knows? We're not sure. But okay, there's the appearance of this this mysterious figure. Now maybe we might talk about this figure a little bit later in this series, but let's just remember again another introduction of another person in the world of Twin Peaks. Now, we should go back to the authorities, and if you recall, to the scene at the beginning with Leland Palmer and the very heavy, quite grave tone that is culminated by that almost confrontational comment that Dale Cooper makes to Doc Hayward at the outset of the episode, almost shaming Doc Hayward in a way. But then this is lightened quite immediately by the question from Andy about the diagnosis that Andy is sterile, and maybe he could take a test again to, I guess, test his virility or sterility. Essentially, in order to do that, Doc Hayward very conveniently pulls out a vial from his bag and says, "Fill it up." And he says, just put it in a paper bag. I'll be waiting in the car. So that must have been quite an interesting wait. And I don't know how many minutes Doc Hayward waited. Maybe it was a matter of minutes or hours. I'm not sure. I don't know if it was hours, but maybe. In any event, so this causes Andy to try to find, what's the phrase? Try to find some inspiration. And in order to find inspiration, he tries to go trying to find not an episode, but a magazine, Flesh World. Unfortunately for him, of course, he runs into Lucy, and she finds the Flesh World magazine, and she assumes that he's going to the bathroom because the restroom is right behind him. So she assumes the worst. But Lucy's, I think, situation is, from my vantage point, I mean, I love Lucy, don't get me wrong, she's really wonderful. But it's somewhat precarious because she is now revealing the reason why she went out with Dick Tremaine over Andy, who seems to be quite a lovable man and who loves Lucy. And it seemed like at the start that she loved him, but she seems to be expressing doubts, or she did. He doesn't even own a sports coat and that sort of thing. So she shows something of kind of not being fully satisfied, let's say, with her relationship with Andy, which then brought her to a meeting Dick Tremaine, who worked at Horn's department store. According to her, well, it's a great line, regarding Dick Tremaine. She says, Lucy says, most of his behavior was asinine, but at least he was different. So I love that line because the word asinine was something that when I first saw Twin Peaks and I first saw this episode and I heard that line about the behavior, most of his behavior was asinine. I didn't know what the word asinine meant, so it was quite. I had to look it up, and so every time now I run across the word asinine, I always think of Lucy, and Lucy teaching me the meaning of the word asinine. I have a similar experience with the film Hellbound Hellraiser 2. I love cinema for a number of reasons. I think when I was growing up, one of the reasons was that I was able to learn vocabulary words. And so asinine was one. And another word from the film Hellbound Hellraiser 2 was the word evisceration. I was able to learn what the word evisceration meant because it was used in that film by a character who's named Dr. Chenard. But in any event, going back to this world, Twin Peaks and asinine. So now Lucy is now showing that yes, there is a love triangle here: Lucy, Dick Tremaine, and Andy. And so what's going to happen here? And also we have to remember too that Lucy is pregnant. Now, regarding that, Dick Tremaine comes in on the rainy, stormy night, and she thinks at first that maybe he has come to accept her and the unborn child. But in fact, what he's there to do is to give her money for an abortion. And so she is quite offended by this. And so this also causes, or it's one of the reasons for the tension between her and Dick Tremaine. So there's tension between her and Andy. There's also tension between her and Dick Tremaine. So this is a very intriguing love triangle indeed. Again, Twin Peaks, the show, is a show that's filled with so many triangles. So many triangles, so many donuts, so many circles, so many geometric shapes. So many Z's, so many mountains, so many everything. So many lines, so many everything. So anyway, one of those very key geometric shapes is of course the triangle, and that's the love triangle. So what will happen here, we shall see. We shall see going forward. But so that is another very important aspect of this episode. And also we should remember too, speaking of love triangles or triangles, one of the triangles that we identified was Donna, James, and Harold, or maybe another way to put it, Donna, Laura, and Harold Smith. And I actually like the latter description, because in this episode we get a furtherance of this Laura, Donna, Harold triangle, because we have another scene with Donna, and Donna with Harold and the diary, a secret diary of Laura Palmer. And so this is now setting off this part of the plot. Of course, we're getting revelations about what Laura said to Harold, or what Laura revealed to Harold about how Laura felt about Donna, for example. So there's this intimate connection already forming between Harold and Donna in a very almost roundabout way. But also in terms of the plot, this is the key for Donna to try to get her hands on this diary. So maybe this might hold some clue or clues as to what happened to Laura Palmer, and indeed who killed Laura Palmer. So this sets off those wheels in motion, and she now tries to get the help of none other than Maddie. And if you recall from previous episodes, according to what Donna thinks is that Maddie and James are getting together, so that sets her off. So Maddie's trying to maybe apologize or explain what's going on, but in fact what they're going to do is they're going to get together, and Donna wants her help to try to the idea is maybe try to get at this diary, whatever it is. So the secret diary of Laura Palmer. So this involves Harold Smith and what secrets he might hold, or what he might have in store for everyone concerned, and going forward with that. So this is again part of the aspect of the series that we saw from the very beginning. There's this idea of the diary that we saw from the opening episodes, the pilot and opening episodes. But now we have this aspect of the diary and Harold Smith. So what's the same? What's different? Indeed, Maddie even mentions this. It wasn't the diary we were taking. No, this is something else. So there's more intrigue placed upon this element of the diary. What's going to go happen here? Again, we'll have to wait and see. And just following through with this, so we have we have Hank, we have the ending of this film, and Jonathan, and the attack on Hank, and now they're blood brothers. And so we understand that Jonathan, the cousin of Josie, seems to be quite dangerous indeed, and quite a physical threat. If we recall that Hank is a physical threat because of the way in which he's able to take care of Leo, and Leo is himself a physical threat, then if someone can take care of Hank in this way, then that person must be a physical threat. So Jonathan therefore poses this very serious risk that I think is another element of the danger involved and the like. So, and also now we have, speaking of danger, I forgot to mention too another very key aspect of this, which is Ben Horn and Audrey and Jean Renault and the kidnapping scheme and the extortion scheme to get, what is it, $125K, right? Because Jean Renault goes to the Great Northern, shows Ben Horn the tape his daughter being captured like this. And so this is quite the conundrum indeed. Very, very dangerous indeed. But this is part of Jean Reno's plan. Apparently, we seem to think that it seems like Jean Reno wants to get back at Cooper for the wrong that Jean Reno believes that Cooper has inflicted on Jean Reno and his brothers. So that's the implication, I think, that's borrowed from the previous episode. So then this brings Ben Horne to want to get the help of Cooper. And so Cooper then goes and he examines the situation. And here Ben Horne says something very curious, which is that he understands that, or he assumes that there's a very special connection, special relationship between Dale Cooper and Audrey Horne. If you recall, throughout the series, there was arguably, at least early on, maybe a type of connection or chemistry between the two characters. But of course, there is also that scene around the latter half of season 1 where Audrey makes an advance upon him by visiting him in his room and being in his bed, but he rejects her advances quite firmly, and he puts her in the friend zone, if you recall. So it's curious that Ben Horne would consider that there is a special relationship between these. But of course, at the same time, if you recall, Dale Cooper did later when he questions Ben Horne, I think an episode or so ago. He does show a very special interest in Audrey Horne, and this maybe suggests to Ben that maybe there's something between the two of them. But of course, this is, again, part of the backdrop for the scene here in this episode where Ben calls Dale Cooper and asks for his assistance to try to deliver the money. Will he do it? And I think the assumption is yes, because then we have the scene involving Dale trying to ask for a bookhouse boy. Anyone, a bookhouse boy to help, we assume, with this particular mission. So he asks Sheriff Truman for a bookhouse boy, and then so they will have a rendezvous and they will meet. So which bookhouse boy will he choose? We find out it's none other than Sheriff Truman. I love that scene between the two. It's Sheriff Truman who is the one who chooses to be the one that will help Cooper. And I love that scene for a number of reasons. The way that the music is swelling, falling, Angelo Badalamenti, again, one of the great heroes of Twin Peaks, and one of the great heroes of modern cinematic scores as well. I love it for that reason. Also, the bond between the two men, Sheriff Truman and Dale Cooper, that relationship is wonderful. I love when Cooper realizes that the person that Sheriff Truman chose for the bookhouse boy is indeed Sheriff Truman. I love that moment when Dale goes like that. And he points, he snaps his fingers and points. And he's, yes, it's you. That is a great moment. The bond between these two men is undeniably strong and powerful, and there will be, I know, many more opportunities throughout Twin Peaks where we'll see this bond maybe tested, but then fortified even more. We've seen its fortifications in so many beautiful scenes leading up to this particular moment, and this moment, which is, as I say, so beautiful. Also so beautiful, I should say, is that formation of, I think it's nuts on the bar counter there. Dale Cooper is doing, like, it looks like Space Invaders, with like a triangular shape. Another triangle, I think, I think those are nuts. In this, keep an eye out for all the characters and the tables when they're in tables. See how messy the table or the counters or the bar tops are. With nuts or nutshells. It's a fascinating exercise. We'll talk about that. There's a very famous, well, again, I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but just keep an eye out for that. Here's an example of nuts on a bar counter. And so it's a great scene for that and for other reasons too. What a lovely scene that is. So yes, so I think we can end it there. There's, again, so many hints and clues and things about the mystery, many more people being introduced, many more characters that are filling out this world, occupying this world, showing us that there's so many things, maybe names that are mentioned that we may or may not meet later down the line. But we shall see. We shall see indeed. So this is, I think, another very special and wonderful episode of Twin Peaks. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies and TV shows like Twin Peaks. And so until we meet again, thank you and cheers.